Welcome to the Wolf Sports Show. Trusted, proven analysis of all 32 teams every week during the NFL season. Hey, it's Dave Chapin. Thank you for listening to the Wolf Sports Show. A ton of stuff happening around the NFL, most notably the quarterback injuries, including to Bengals star Joe Burrow. Jaden Daniels for the Commanders now banged up. Brock Purdy missed last week, and just 10 unbeaten teams remaining after 2 weeks. So let's jump right in, looking ahead to week 3. Of course, we have plenty of stuff on wolfsports.com covering all that, but let's jump into this week's show with a look at the week 3 schedule. We'll go through each matchup, and again, hit on all 32 teams. Starting with Thursday Night Football, Dolphins-Bills. Miami couldn't beat the Patriots at home last week, so they're in a rough spot. They typically don't lose home games to the Patriots, especially early in the season when it's hot. The best thing for them is whenever Devon Achane gets the ball, that's their path to wins. Have him touch the ball as many times as possible. It almost got them the win last week. Looked like a go-ahead touchdown late. Unfortunately stepped out of bounds. But Tua might have a tough time with this Buffalo defense that just shut down the Jets, who look really good offensively in week 1, and then the Bills shut that down. This game's at Highmark Stadium for the Bills. You saw last week how balanced the offense is with James Cook going off on the ground. They'll beat you however they need to. And I like how Joey Bosa looked last week. Forced a fumble on Justin Fields and was making plays. Looks rejuvenated there. Then to Sunday, Bengals-Vikings. So 2 teams that just lost their starting quarterbacks for a little bit. Burrow, I'm sure you've heard, unfortunately out for 3 months. Severe turf toe, needs surgery. But Jake Browning, he was over 500 for them when he stepped in a couple of years ago. A 2-0 start after the win over the Jags, so they're somewhat of a cushion. Hopefully they're in contention beyond Thanksgiving, and we can get Burrow back in the lineup. And I mean, Browning is in a good spot. Jamar Chase, T. Higgins. Hopefully the offensive line holds up. Burrow's toughness behind that group, a big part of his game. Look for a heavy dose of Chase getting the ball into his hands. Good things happen. Then on the other side, J.J. McCarthy out. Looks like at least a couple of games with a high ankle sprain, maybe 2 to 4 games they're saying. They have an international trip after this week, so that complicates things a little bit, but Carson Wentz will be under center. And maybe not the worst thing for McCarthy and for the Vikings. For McCarthy, gets to recharge, and for the Vikings, he clearly wasn't playing up to their standard to this point. I think Chris Collinsworth hit it pretty well on Sunday Night Football, their loss at the Falcons. How they've had 7 bad quarters of offense and 1 good quarter, the fourth quarter against the Bears in week 1. Obviously not what you expect from a team that just won 14 games last season. The vibes overall, aside from that, comeback in the fourth quarter in week 1, which looked like maybe something to build on. Doesn't seem like a lot of confidence in the offense. We'll see if Wentz at quarterback can change that. The AFC South teams play each other this week. Texans, Jaguars. Houston now 0-2 after a tough loss to the Bucs on Monday night. Defense has done its part, but the offense is slow start under Nick Haley, the new offensive coordinator. Looks a lot like last year. I think I said that last week, and that was the case again in week 2. Jaguars, feels like that was a game they should have won when Joe Burrow left last week. Give Cincy a lot of credit. They stuck in there and won it in the end at home. Trevor Lawrence getting the hang of Liam Cohen's offense a little bit. Didn't like how demonstrative Cohen was in hitting his chest and yelling at Lawrence right on the field to hit his receiver more accurately, and Lawrence sort of waved him off. Was kind of a big story. I think the bigger issue with that is Cohen, that should probably be saved for the meeting room, I think. I don't think I've ever seen that where a coach is yelling at his quarterback to be more accurate so emphatically like that at the NFL level. Very early, obviously, but sort of a pivot game here. Houston doesn't want to go to 0-3, and the Jags looking to bounce back into 2-1 after losing last week. And then Colts-Titans. Indy now 2-0 after beating Denver. They're the first team in the Super Bowl era not to punt through 2 games. So I think it's safe to say Daniel Jones wasn't really the issue at all in New York. Healthier now, that helps. But you could say it's only 2 games, but he's shown throughout his time when he's been healthy, when he led the Giants to the playoffs in an upset win against the Vikings, that he can play and lead a winning team. And Jonathan Taylor had 215 yards and a touchdown. Titans looking to get there. Cameron Ward threw his first touchdown last week to Eleke Omonor. Ward was scrambling right and threw it to the left side of the end zone, sort of a rainbow throw, and it was accurate. That's the type of stuff that made Tennessee excited about him at number 1 overall. They hung around against the Rams last Sunday. Wheels fell off a little bit at the end. We'll see how they fare in a divisional matchup. Raiders-Commanders, Jaden Daniels is likely out for Washington, dealing with the knee sprain from last Thursday night's loss to the Packers. He's looked a little bit off through 2 games, not quite as sharp as normal. Terry McLaurin hasn't gotten going really at all. Obviously reigning Offensive Rookie of the Year. Not going to say it's a good thing he's out of the lineup, but if you paid attention last year, Marcus Mariota arguably played just as well in Cliff Kingsbury's offense when he was in there in relief a couple of times. I expect him to do a nice job. The Raiders struggled in the late Monday night game. Geno Smith, 3 interceptions. Give the Chargers credit. Defense didn't make things easy. Of course, Geno needs to get better. Started the game with an early interception. Somewhat interesting, they went after him very aggressively via trade with the Seahawks instead of maybe signing a free agent like Mariota, who played for their offensive coordinator Chip Kelly at Oregon. So that's a storyline to watch this week. Mariota facing a Raiders team he played for before. One of the matchups of the week is Rams-Eagles, both 2-0, a playoff rematch. This one again taking place in Philadelphia. They just found a way to win last week. Rookie safety Andrew Makuba had the clutch interception in the fourth quarter on the ball that went off Travis Kelce's hands. Saquon Barkley had a little more room to run than the Super Bowl, scored a touchdown in the win, just finding a way to go 1-0 every week. But you'd like to see a little more production and creativity from the passing attack. Try to get A.J. Brown more involved. Seemed like mostly just quick stuff and slants that didn't really pop. I think you want to see Brown and Smith have a lot more production, especially if they get in more like shootout games. The Rams, as stated earlier, sort of separated from the Titans late. Devontae Adams had over 100 yards and touchdown. Looks like he's fitting perfectly there for LA. There's some trash talk between the Rams and Eagles last year. Going to be a good test for that defense. And again, for the Philly side, looking to get that passing game going. They might need to this week if the Rams can contain Barkley. Should be a high energy week 3 matchup for sure. NFC South battle, Falcons, Panthers. The Atlanta defense, 6 sacks, 4 takeaways last week. Rookie safety Xavier Watts mentioned the plays he made in week 1 and then came through with a late interception in week 2. Pass rush, Leonard Floyd got a sack. The young guys, James Pierce Jr. and Jalen Walker, showed energy. And the offense, they fed Bijan Robinson. We got some clarity on his name, but he is going by Bijan. Michael Penix Jr. didn't try to do too much at quarterback. He knows in that type of game, why not just feed his star running back, play to the defense. Might be a similar path this week against the Panthers. Now down Robert Hunt and Austin Corbett on the offensive line. So a tough situation for Bryce Young, even more difficult now. Feel like there's a little too much on his shoulders and him just working magic. They got back in the game last week against the Cardinals and even got the onside kick, but couldn't come out with a win. As 2 positives, Michael Jackson had a really good game at corner last week, and Ted McMillan, the rookie receiver. Again, he's making like highlight plays, and even incompletions, he's almost turning into highlights. So a lot of upside for him. Steelers-Patriots, intriguing matchup. Both teams 1-1. Pittsburgh lost at home to Seattle last week. Run defense remains a concern for Pittsburgh in terms of allowing big play threats like Breece Hall, Kenneth Walker to sort of slash through the defense. On the other side, on offense for the Steelers, Jalen Warren had an outstanding game last week. I think getting him the ball a lot is a good idea. Drake May had one of the best games of his young career in the win over the Dolphins. This pass defense should be a bigger test and could get Christian Gonzalez back at corner, who is back at practice to start the week, and that'd be a nice boost for sure for a defense that's been somewhat disappointing so far. Packers-Browns, I talked a lot about the Packers in our latest YouTube video about the job Matt LaFleur does. Went into the All-22 film a little bit. Jane Reed's going to miss several weeks with a broken collarbone, but they're plenty deep at receiver. As I mentioned in the video, even missed opportunities for even more points and more touchdowns, bigger games from the offense. The defense, Keyshawn Nixon at corner, was a standout. Had a few breakups against the Commanders. They go to Cleveland, so it could be sort of a defensive battle. We'll see. Browns defense should be a challenge. And for Cleveland, blown out. They stopped Derrick Henry, but 4 touchdowns by Lamar Jackson. As a major positive, rookie running back Quinshon Judkins in his first NFL action definitely looks the part. Big and strong, powerful, played with good pace, looks to be in great shape. Could be a workhorse very quickly as a rookie. Jets, Buccaneers. New York, another quarterback injury, going to be without Justin Fields due to concussion. Was inconsistent, struggling, missing some throws last week in the loss to the Bills. Ground game, couldn't get a ton going. If the Jets can't run and play good defense, they're probably going to be in trouble this year. But Tyrod Taylor steps in at quarterback this week at Tampa Bay. The Bucs, first team, I think, in the Super Bowl era it was, to have 2 game-winning touchdowns in the final minute of the first 2 games. So they're already battle-tested. That's a great sign for a team with Super Bowl hopes with that roster. Graham Barton doing a great job moving from center to the left tackle while Tristan Wirfs is out. Not putting up huge point totals, but still playing through the running backs a lot. Once they get Mike Evans going a little more, Chris Godwin is going to be back soon. Emeka Ibuka scored again. Looks like a first-round hit for sure. Plenty of talent and upside for the Bucs. Just 4 late afternoon games on Sunday, kind of disappointing. But one of them a key AFC West battle. Broncos-Chargers. Khalil Mack is out with an elbow injury, going to keep him out a few weeks. But it could have been worse. So that's good news overall. Still, the defense, they got a bunch of corners. Overall, just a stifling group through 2 games. Derwin James, Jim Harbaugh called him the best safety in NFL history. You could say what you want about that, but he's definitely become an underrated player. Doesn't get as much shine as he should as one of the best defenders in the NFL. And the offense, Quentin Johnston, a long touchdown last week. They look like they're going to be dangerous through the air. It was good to see Najee Harris get more work. I think Omarion Hampton maybe needs to develop some, and they could get Najee involved like that to work in tandem with Hampton instead of him being an immediate workhorse. And then Hampton also has more of a big play element to his game. that can mix in there. For Denver, Troy Franklin, second-year receiver, big game last week in the loss to the Colts. Positive sign for the receiving group. J.K. Dobbins looks like a very good addition. Had a late touchdown. Looked like Denver was in control at the Colts. They appeared to win on a missed 60-yard field goal, but then that leverage call made it a 45-yard opportunity for Spencer Schrader, and he hit it to stun the Broncos, who again looked like they had the game won. But that leverage call was pretty questionable, so we might have to keep an eye on that late in the season. In a tight AFC, that's a game the Broncos feel they were kind of robbed. You don't want to put it on one play and one call, but that was a tough one. The Saints go to Seattle to face the Seahawks, so a big test. Clint Kubiak, now coordinating the Seahawks, faces the team he coordinated last year. Kenneth Walker got going at running back. Cooper Kupp got going at receiver. Defense played great against the Steelers. They got to 1-1 with the other three teams in the division at 2-0, looking to build on that at home. But the Saints, again, it happened in week 2. They look better than expected to me. With how the Eagles offense has struggled a bit through the air, through 2 games, while the Saints are getting guys open. Kellen Moore is the head coach now for New Orleans. Looks like he's doing a good job. Want to see more production from Chris Olave at receiver. Getting opportunities, just not playing like a difference-making number 1 receiver through 2 games. The Bears host the Cowboys. Chicago now 0-2, blown out by the Lions last week in Ben Johnson's return to Detroit. Johnson just said yesterday, sort of what I've been feeling, how they're just not there yet, a lot of work to do. He said their practice habits are not close to a championship level, basically. Past 5 quarters for them, they started well defensively the first 3 quarters, but giving up a ton of points after that start to the season. For Dallas, it was a very weird win, week 2. Ton of points scored, not much defense. Came down to kicker Brandon Aubrey hitting a game-tying field goal at the end of regulation, and then a game-winning field goal in the final second in overtime. Bottom line is they got the win. Offense has found something with Javonte Williams at running back. George Pickens made plays late last week. Defense needs to be better, but they need to do damage offensively against the Chicago defense that struggled. The 49ers host the Cardinals. Arizona held on against the Panthers last week. Josh Sweat made a key play early, forcing a turnover. Overall, the defense off to a pretty fast start in both games. On the road in the division will be a good test in week 3. Mac Jones played really well in his first start for Kyle Shanahan. Threw the ball accurately on time, especially when he got in rhythm. He was sort of cooking, and not a surprise, and I expect him to continue to have success as long as he's in there, but hopefully Brock Purdy is healthy soon for them. Defensively for the Niners, Bryce Huff looks like a great fit there with Robert Saw as the defensive coordinator. He had success with him on the Jets. A good piece opposite Nick Bosa. On Sunday Night Football, surprising matchup, Chiefs-Giants, but both 0-2, so both pretty desperate. Chiefs, obviously, we expect them to get on track to some extent. Don't expect them to miss the playoffs. They'll get Rashee Rice healthy at some point. Xavier Worthy looks like he'll be back this week at receiver. Defense played well overall against the Eagles. The offense just felt limited to some extent, though. Maybe getting the ground game going with Isaiah Pacheco would help. They feel almost without an identity on that side of the ball. And the big drop by Kelsey, definitely frustrating early in the game. He was yelling that he's tired of this or whatever. And then have a drop like that, that's not great. But he's had plenty of success. Look for him to get on track soon. He could be a big part of Kansas City, maybe waking up starting this Sunday night. The Giants, Russell Wilson, I think, heard the talk about Jackson Dart likely taking over at quarterback soon, and he came out inspired, was throwing bombs. If the defense made some key stops, it'd be a different situation right now with the way he played. But they're 0-2 and need that defense, that front with a lot of resources invested into it to get after Mahomes this week and get a win. Finally, Monday Night Football. A potential Super Bowl preview, my Super Bowl 60 pick, Lions-Ravens. It's at Baltimore. That's a challenge for Detroit. We're blown out there 2 seasons ago. I could see the Ravens getting after that interior offensive line as it gels together still. But last week, 52 points for the Lions. Amon-Ra St. Brown, 3 touchdowns. Jameson Williams, 2 catches for 108 yards and a touchdown. Both Gibbs and Montgomery scored on the ground. Goff joined Tom Brady, Drew Brees, and Peyton Manning as the 4th quarterback in NFL history with 5 50-point games. Extremely underrated quarterback still. To talk about him being a product of Sean McVay and Ben Johnson was quieted pretty quickly after that. Hopefully they can protect and stretch the field with J-Mo and everyone this week on the road. Ravens were, I think, a bit angry at blowing the lead to the Bills in week 1. Mentioned the Jackson 4 touchdowns over the Browns. Devontae Walker caught 2 of them in his second year. Rashad Bateman hasn't really done much at receiver. Mark Andrews been quiet at tight end. They might get Isaiah Likely back. If the Lions shut down Henry like the Browns did, might be difficult to hold up on the back end against all the weapons Jackson has to throw to and what he can do just navigating in the pocket behind the line of scrimmage and finding open guys. Will be a bigger test for that Baltimore secondary, though, after the way Josh Allen carved them up in week 1. But if Nnamdi Madubuike and others can get pressure up the middle, could be in a good spot at home. So week 3 includes a number of divisional matchups, a Sunday Night Football game with 2 0-2 teams, and then a Monday Night Football game with 2 of the Super Bowl favorites. I expect the exciting start, the season to continue. Enjoy all the games. Thank you for listening, and we'll be back next week. Make sure to subscribe to the channel right here on YouTube and you can also find the audio version wherever you get your podcasts. We'll see you next time.